Does the website look okay down there, or do you think the handle is better? Maybe
Yes.
Yeah. So hi everyone, thank you for joining this evening and welcome to this South Asian Heritage Month panel discussion for the exhibition Roots and Changes, Gujarati Influences. My name is Tia Diabai and I will be hosting this evening. I'm the museum's lead for South Asian Heritage Month. The month runs from the 18th of July to the 17th of August every year, and it exists to celebrate and commemorate British South Asian histories and identities, both past and present. So as I said, we're joined together today for a panel discussion on Roots and Changes, Gujarati Influences, and I'm very pleased to be joined by a wonderful group of panelists who have contributed to the exhibition. We'll delve more into the contents of the show over the next hour, but as a brief description, the exhibition is currently on display at Brent Museum in North London until the 22nd of August. So from traditional craft to early economic relations and trade to colonialism, the exhibition tells the Gujarati story of migration, which has enriched the UK. So I'll start by asking a few prepared questions to the panelists, and for the last 20 minutes, we'll be opening up questions from the audiences. So if you have any, please do send them through into the live chat. So to begin with, I thought we would go around to each panelist for a brief introduction to who they are and their connection to the exhibition. So perhaps Lata, would you like to go first?
Hello, Tia. Thank you so much for inviting us to this South Asian Heritage Month panel discussion. My name is Lata Desai. I am the curator of the Roots and Changes exhibition, and I'm also the chairperson of a leading South Asian arts organization in South London, Sabrang Arts.
Thank you. Sheena, would you like to go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sheena. My background is in architecture and my area of practice is primarily community development. And my role within the Roots and Changes exhibition has been of research. I've been working with the research team and social media. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Rolf, would you like to go?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Tia, for inviting us. My name is Ralph Killius. I am the curator with Lata for the exhibition Roots and Changes. And generally, I work as an ethnomusicologist, as a museum curator and exhibition curator as well.
Great, thank you. And Sushma?
Hello, I'm the Table Foundation curator of South Asia at the British Museum, and it still feels very strange actually, but I love that Rolf very kindly chose me alongside other brilliant people, including Mohammed here, to feature in the exhibition. It feels very strange to be on that side rather than the person doing the curating, so it's been really interesting.
Nice. And Mohammed, lastly?
Yeah, thank you, Tia. My name is Mohammed Kishabji. I'm a lawyer and I'm an international cross-cultural mediation specialist. Not meditation, but mediation. I'm a scholar of the Indian diaspora in Africa. I was born in South Africa, lived in Kenya during the expulsion of the Asians from Uganda. I've written 2 books on this and hopefully wish to write the next one next year, which is the 50th anniversary of the Ugandan expulsion. So I'm very excited about this whole process of preservation of our culture.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being here today. So I thought I would begin by asking Lata and Rolf, as you're the curators, I wanted to initially ask if you could tell us a little bit more about the project and how did it start and what were your intentions?
Just to give you a little background to this Roots and Changes exhibition, about 4 years ago, we did a beautiful project, an exhibition at the Museum of Croydon, which was called Gujarati Yatra, Journey of a People. And in this project, we were exploring how the Gujaratis left their homeland, crossed the Indian Ocean, an arduous journey, and they settled in the African states. During this project, we also looked at the trade relations between the Gujaratis and the Arab world, the African world, and also why they left their homeland to help build railways in Africa, and also a lot of them went as business people. So once after 1960, after Africanization, this diasporic community became twice migrants, and a lot of them went to the numerous Western countries. A lot of them settled in Britain as well, and a huge population of the Gujaratis settled in Brent. Now, in 2020, Brent won the Borough of Culture Award, and it was quite apt for us to celebrate the contribution of these Gujarati people who form the second largest population in Brent. And very kindly, we were supported by the Brent Museum and Archives and a lot of other organizations. Collaboration was at the heart of this project, and British Museum also came on board at a later stage. And wonderfully, we looked at the work and the leisure practices of the Gujaratis. When we talk of Gujaratis, they're not a monolithic community. You have Hindus, Muslims, Jains, Buddhists, Zoroastrians, and all of them have got such a wonderful background. The cultural combination of influences which they have from various sources. And the Gujaratis have not only influenced the host country, but they themselves have also changed. And that is what we were trying to explore about how has this community contributed to Britain in British life, and also our focus was in Brent. And then we took lots of oral histories, and my co-curator Rolf will talk a bit more about the oral histories. We also looked at art and craft. We did a lot of outreach work with various communities, and a work which was created during this outreach work is all displayed at the exhibition.
Yeah, shall I?
Yeah.
Maybe I also go back to Gujarati Yatra, the journey of the people, which we did together in Croydon. I think at the heart of our work is actually the idea of community curation. We want to include the community in the curation of the project. I remember when we started the Gujarati Yatra, Lata was asking me, what is the curation of the project? I said, let's get all these important people and interview them, and do all history interviews with them. And I think we get all the topics from them because they are important persons. One is next to us, Mohammed Kashefji. He has given us such an insight in this history of the Gujarati people coming from South and East Africa, And I think that was just living up the whole experience. And in this project, Roots and Changes, Gujarati Influences, it's basically about the changes what the Gujarati community have achieved in this country. I think, like any immigrant community who is in this country, they have brought something, didn't come with empty hands, they brought something, their culture, their music, their tradition, their food, and so I think that's so important, and that's what we wanted to show in this exhibition. And again, the method was taking oral history interviews, and in this case we selected 10 important people, and one is Shushma, and from the British Museum. I think you have said so many important things, And so from this long interviews we did with around 10 people, we selected maybe 2-3 minutes, and we showed them in the exhibition. So we had the exhibition was built up having this 10 so-called influencers, and we have a large portrait, and then what the important things, what they wanted to say, we have shown them on a big screen. So I think that's something what we wanted to do, that they show how they have influenced this country, or that other people can say, can see how these people have influenced this country. And of course, we could have taken easily 10 or 20 or 30 other people. There are so many interesting people here. And I think that's fun. And then I think hopefully people like this exhibition.
Yeah, that was something that really struck me actually when visiting the exhibition, was how collaborative it was, and you got that immediately once entering. I wondered, how did you go about engaging with the community in Brent, as well as pioneering Gujarati individuals from the surrounding areas? How did you get that kind of balance?
I think what Rolf is talking about, the oral histories, we looked at people from all kinds of spheres, music, arts, dance, literature, language, spiritual life, political life, heritage, and you name it, and Gujaratis have been everywhere. They're not just business people, but they have, really done so much work in so many fields. So we had a lot of connections with the community organizations, and one really good influence for me personally was the Neasden Temple, where I had an opportunity to work with the women at the Neasden Temple. We did some oral history training with the youngsters up there as well, and we taught them some art practices, embroidery, our mural craft, and in the beginning, we just worked with 40 people, and then it spread to 400 women. Can you believe it? So, and they were absolutely, and the pandemic was such a wonderful thing for them, because during that pandemic, they produced all this wonderful, beautiful work, which some of it, which is displayed in the exhibition. So, and similarly, Sanatan Temple, the mosques on Ealing Road, all the businesses on Ealing Road. Rolf had a wonderful time talking to all these business communities, and they are not just the twice migrants from Africa. A lot of these people are who come directly from Gujarat, especially the Diu, Daman people, and also the professionals who have now settled in Brent. So it's a combination of the twice migrant Gujaratis and also people who have come straight, and you can straight away tell the difference and the influences each has brought in their own special way. So that was very interesting for us. And Brent has been wonderful, just to connect. We are based in South London, but it was so infectious, their enthusiasm, and it could be that because it was a borough of culture, that they were really wanting to tell their story. And you go to anybody, any organization, and everybody was really wanting to help us produce this exhibition. So as I said, it was a project based on a collaboration from so many people.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Sheena,
so
how
we
did
had-
you approach the research side of the exhibition, and what kind of drew you to taking part in the project?
So being a firstborn generation in Britain, obviously I'm questioning identity, and it's an area I explored through my thesis like 10 years ago. And attending Gujarati Yatra 4 years ago, I sort of kept in touch with Lata, and I was very I would like to be involved in the process, particularly migration, like our Indian diaspora, how the migration pattern evolved, and how I ended up here, and how I've integrated in a Western society, but holding on to my roots, and how like Gujarati is my identity as well as being a modern woman in the United Kingdom. So those are the kind of influences that drew me to sort of explore this subject further. There are so many parameters attached with how much we can explore within this area, but slowly we're sort of exploring each layer by layer, and we're finding out so much richness to all of the subjects that we explored. So yeah, it's been an overwhelming experience. So
yeah, I found it really fascinating to discover so many kind of prolific Gujarati-based people in the UK who have like helped shape the country that I never knew about. And yeah, it's kind of no surprise as Gujarat itself, so many pioneering individuals such as Mahatma Gandhi and the industrialist Jamshedji Tata, who founded Tata Group. Yeah, I wondered, Mohammed, that this kind of feeds into your research. So how do you think these individuals have shaped Gujarat? And in terms of your professional research into pluralistic worlds, how does this kind of feed into the exhibition? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I was just looking at the recent insurrection in South Africa, for example. I think the lack of a pluralistic discourse is the foundation of conflict. We are going to see more and more conflict in this period unless people begin to understand each other's cultures. And this is where I think what we are doing now, what Lata and Rolf have really pioneered on a shoestring, is helping culture not to become a monumental relic, but a true daily living. I mean, Gujaratis in this country are beginning to understand their culture, but not to become, to get themselves into a ghetto. They are being able to live their culture through their embroidery, through their art, through their music, through the new skills they've learned, and combine it very judiciously with the culture of the host country. I think that this is where the future lies. Now, if you talk about the great icons of the past, people like Mahatma Gandhi, people like Dadabhai Naoroji, people like Savikram Sarabhai, people like the Tatars, people like Rechenbai. I mean, these people were not only, they were people who spoke about the moral universe. They spoke about culture. They spoke about ethics. They spoke about values. They spoke about literature. And I think that we have that richness to draw from, but not to only monumentalize it. We need to make it into a living ethos in our life. And this is where I think both Rolf and Lata have gone beyond just an exhibition. They've made this into a process. And I think this speaks to different communities, to Muslims, to Parsis, to Gujaratis, Jains, Shahs, Patels. It covers a very large, to different groups of Muslims, Surtis and Memons and Bohras and Ishnasris and Ismailis. They all see Gujarat as their homeland, their origin. And I think this is where culture goes beyond faith, goes beyond class. It transcends. And I think this is what we need to capture, which I think these exhibitions are beginning to really capture very beautifully. Yeah. And I think that this is where our education is. Our identity will be sort of reinforced in a very positive way through a cultural understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I wondered, Sushma, what your thoughts are on this. Coming from the British Museum, do you think this could potentially be something that they could move forward with?
I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to just follow on from what Mohammed actually just said, because I think what he said is vital, actually, about the importance of these kind of exhibitions and even these kind of events, actually, because it's not just about connecting with your past, but actually recording it for future generations and actually recognizing how important it is to record those stories. Because how many times have we heard our grandparents or our parents talking about, oh my goodness, this happened in East Africa and that happened in East Africa, and I was born in this country and that country, and this is how we used to do things, and this is the food we used to eat, and these are the clothes I used to make, and all of these things. But I think until recently, I think we didn't realize how important that is to record that as our cultural memory. Not just for right now, but also I want my daughter to hear about this. I want her to understand. I don't want those stories just to be lost and forgotten. And I think by having the kind of research that Lata and Rolf were engaged in, preserved for posterity. And I know Mohammed was talking about oral histories as well, and I know Lata mentioned it as well. I think that's so important. It's something I think we really should be investing our time and energy and little pots of money in, because those generations, they are getting older. Those first generations that came here to the UK from East Africa, Most of my grandparents have now passed away. My dad has passed away. But before my dad passed away, I literally sat there with my phone and recorded him talking about his experience in Uganda, which is where he grew up. And I think that's really important. So I think the combination of this, the idea of the South Asian Heritage Month, this incredible exhibition, the kind of conversations all of it is generating, I really hope that it helps us all to then move to the next step, which is sitting down with our elders and other members of our communities and recording their stories and recognizing just how important that is. It's not just some ephemeral thing, it's vital, it's part of our cultural memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just the Gujarati Yatra exhibition, that's been archived online, and there's so many interesting oral histories from that. So if anybody wants to engage with that, that's all on their website. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I wondered, Sushma, if you could tell us more about the collaboration with the British Museum. So what kind of objects, the specific terracotta figures that you chose to exhibit in the exhibition, and the background behind those?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do it in two parts. So first, in terms of how we collaborated, and I'll leave Rolf to talk about the objects, actually, because he's been to that part of the Gujarat, he knows it very well. So I'd like him to talk about his incredible research in that area. But in terms of our collaboration, I remember we first had a coffee with Freddie Matthews and Lata and Rolf, and it was just interesting just to meet each other for the first time and talk about what kind of partnership, what kind of work we could engage in. And it got to the point it gradually developed into loaning a series of objects to the exhibition, and they're incredibly fragile, so we don't tend to lend them easily, and just because they are quite brittle, so they're quite challenging to move and display and stuff, as Rolf and Lata will now know. But we also had a fabulous article that Lata wrote for the British Museum magazine, for example, and well, we were hoping to have an event sometime soon, but I think this year it's unlikely to happen. But I like the idea of working together to develop some kind of programming for next year. And it's not just we would like to do this, or the British Museum wants to do this, but I really like the idea of co-developing something quite bespoke that works for both of us, and something very different, whether it's in the Houghton Gallery, whether it's in another part of the museum. So I think more people know what kind of work we work on together, to draw attention to their exhibition and the website and the archived display and stuff like that. And also the kind of work the British Museum does to work with our partners in terms of collaboration. And I think it's important to say that those initial conversations are really important, because that's how you build a relationship and develop that relationship and work together on whatever the outcome might be. So actually it's part and parcel of how we work.
Yeah. Great. If you want to talk to us about those objects, Rolf, that would be amazing.
Yes, I would like. Yeah, of course, as you know, the exhibition is also called Roots and Changes. So I think we wanted to link the situation here in London to the situation where most of the Gujarati community comes from, or that their ancestors comes from. And of course, via East Africa, which goes back around 250 years, I think the British Museum has provided us with this wonderful objects from a community called the Ratwa. Ratwa are indigenous community from mainly Vadodara district, but also some other districts. They belong to the broader Bill community, and they are regarded as a independent community, which are most of the people call them Adivasi, the original people from India. Of course, the other people are also original people, but the Adivasis have their own structure. They live in certain villages. They have their own habits, and they have also this wonderful clay objects, which we got from the British Museum. And these clay objects are little horses, elephants, little vessels, and they were put. I saw them. I was in Gujarat, in this area with the Ratwa community, with some Ratwa people. We toured the area and visited some of the villages, and we saw actually the objects kept on the fields to protect their fields from adversaries, from floods and and just to protect the crops and the fields and also the villages. You know, they were around the fields and around the villages to mark the end of the village, you know. And interestingly, when you see the photographs which I have taken and they are shown in the exhibition, you can see, the objects are put up there, they're clay objects, and then they slowly, the rain comes over it, and slowly they go back to the earth, you know, they dissolve, you know, and then maybe next year you just put new objects there, you know. And exactly these objects were collected in the 1980s from the British Museum and kept there in the archive. I've just seen them there and say, oh, that's exactly the objects I have seen around 30 years later, you know. So I thought that's something what we wanted to show, a symbol of objects which relate to the roots of the Gujarati community. Of course, there are many roots, but that's just one example. And also, I think to add something, we also want that Gujarati people who come to this exhibition see something new. Because many Gujarati, they are born in East Africa, and many grew up in this country, you know. I think we also want to show them something which is something unusual, something which maybe they saw for the first time. And also, just altogether, I think Mohammed mentioned already the importance of this historical work and oral history and all this. I think it's not just important for the Gujarati community. I think these exhibitions are important for every community, you know. I think personally, I learned so much from this research for these two exhibitions. I think we always should do exhibitions which are exciting for everybody who comes to see the exhibition. Everybody can learn something from it. So that's, I think, important.
Tia, if I can add one more point to what Rolf has made, we also need to instill in our Gujarati people an understanding that great actors and dramatists and writers, for example, Ben Kingsley, is half Gujarati. He played the role of Gandhi, but Ben Kingsley's father was from Zanzibar, came to study here in 1928-29. Freddie Mercury is from Zanzibar. He's from a Parsi background, again Gujarati. And then when you take the earliest MPs in this country, Dadabhai Navroji, Munshi Bhavanagiri, I don't know if he was Gujarati or whether he was Bengali, but the Tatars, their contribution, the Sarabhai's family's contribution, his daughter was a great dancer, but Sir Vikram Sarabhai himself was one of the men who pioneered the Indian Institutes of Technology with Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, I think that there's so much of that richness that goes right to the heart of our identity, that if people knew this background, without becoming chauvinistic that Gujaratis are the greatest, no, that's not the point. But to say that, look, one part of India contributed so disproportionately to so much in art, in music, in literature. As Lata Ben says, we must not only be seen as business people. It's important we are business people. But our contribution has gone far beyond trade. In the Indian Ocean, for example, you know, during the colonial endeavors, the Portuguese period, the French, the Germans, the English, the Dutch. I mean, they all interacted with Gujarati tradespeople at some time. The whole maritime trade in the Indian Ocean and its impact on the Arab cultures, it's something that we need to capture. The whole Indian Ocean oral history is part of what we are today in Britain or even in Gujarat. I think that it's a long-term process of education, capturing oral history, researching, and it'll all go to the identity of the Gujarati children who grow up in all these countries.
Yeah. I just pick up on 2 points actually that both Rolf and Mohammed made. I mean, I think Rolf made a really important point. This kind of work is not, as he said, it's not just important for our community, the Gujarati community, but actually it's an important moment to recognise that this is now part of British culture and community. These objects aren't just some alien objects from those people over there. They're here, we are part of this country too, and it's an important way of recognising that and embedding that in the wider culture. And I think also in terms of what Mohammed was saying as well, this, I suppose, So actually, I've completely forgotten that point, so I'll just leave that one. Sorry.
Yeah,
But I just wanted to add to Mohammed's point as well. You know, people like Jayaben Desai, who was a pioneer who made a huge difference in the 70s when she came to Britain, and the Grunwick strike and how it
Yes,
affected the
yes.
trade union movement. And you know, it is these kind of events and these kind of personalities who need to be recognized as our whole intention was to see not only how the Gujaratis have changed, but also we have changed the, you know, how the working conditions of the people improved after Jayaben's stance against the management of the Grunwick strike. That was really, really important milestone, if I may call that. You know, so um, we have so much to offer, but at the same time, we have also influenced the cultural fabric of not only Brant, but throughout UK and also the Western world as well.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Just so I finally remembered the point from what Mohammed said, but actually it touches on what Lata was saying as well. I think a story that I was just mulling over when I first became involved with this exhibition and this project, it just reminds me when I was chatting to my mum actually, and she was saying that actually I took you to, when you were a tiny baby, I took you to the Vasner exhibition on Gujarat at the Museum of Mankind, which is part of the British Museum, and I now curate that collection, which is a weird kind of, oh my God, am I that old for a start? But you know, that kind of thing. But actually with her generation, they didn't really have the opportunity to get involved in as much cultural work as maybe they would have liked to, because, you know, she really needed to get a job and earn an income because actually life was really, really hard and a real struggle at that point. But I suppose with the next couple of generations coming through, we have more opportunity to really go with our interests and follow that as a career. And I think that's something that I've definitely seen is changing. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I'm so excited because actually a lot of that new work that's coming through, it's so exciting and it explores different people and our place in society and everything else in a way that maybe our parents' generation didn't quite have the opportunity to do.
Definitely. Yeah. Just to add further to those points that have been made, there's also been a shift in attitude, you know, particularly with the social climate globally, that these conversations we're all having with identity, with culture. And I think that, you know, now is the best time to capture all of this memory and embrace it. And, you know, from like, especially just looking back at how we used to hide, you know, because we weren't embarrassed of it, but it wasn't as embracing when we went to school. You know, we would be shy away from speaking our mother tongue, or if our parents spoke, we'd be like, oh no, speak in English kind of thing. I think now we're so proud to like speak openly in our mother tongue, the language that we speak at home. And I think that we're seeing this shift in a positive way, and it's just really, really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think so much of that links into the British education system not kind of educating us on our past, and so much of Gujarat's recent history is to do with colonialism, and I think there's so much.
Tia, I wouldn't mind my coming into there for a moment, because I've mentioned this in the book I wrote, that in East Africa, or in Africa, sadly, colonial education, though it was very, very enriching, did not give us a dimension of what it meant to be an Indian. We were taught to hate ourselves because we were always seen as stepchildren of the colonial empire. We were seen as baggage that was dumped in Africa. And when independence came, we were seen as baggage that could be dumped out of the country. We could never enter our own position in our identity on our own standing. And I think, as I don't know who mentioned it, Shushma may have mentioned it, the time is opportune now to encourage our children to write novels, to write books, to write poetry, to write music, to create new recipes, because I think that we do have the enabling environment to do it now. But colonial history had both a very bright side. I don't want to shoot down colonialism completely, but there was a negative side too. We were not taught about Tagore. We were not taught about Ustad Amjad Ali Khan. We were not taught about people like Sarojini Naidu was a poetess. We learnt all this through our own struggle as we left Africa. And I think it's time that our culture has to be part of our life, wherever we live, on our own terms, not in terms of subordination, but in terms of pluralistic discourses and equal airing time. And I think this is where exhibitions, education, identity, culture, all kick in together towards a better education.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's these kinds of exhibitions that have kind of educational and cultural activities beside the physical exhibitions that are so important. So my background is in arts and crafts, but I never had known about Lippanat, for example. And Lata, if you could explain a little bit about Lippanat, that would be great. And that just the people who participated in the artwork.
So it's Lippanat is a mural craft of Gujarat, originates in the Kutch district, where the Kutchi people decorate their bunga huts with mud and clay. And cow dung, but we just contemporized that idea, and we basically wanted to show how people decorate their huts. And Rolf had produced a beautiful film at the Grassy Museum, where they set up a permanent structure of a bunga hut, and in there they are showing how they decorated this a bunga hut with the mud and the cow dung. And here we did workshops with just air dry clay and mirrors. And these women just their imagination just caught their fancy, and they produced such wonderful work, even little children as well. And when these people were doing this Lippanat and also the embroidery, I had young, even my age ladies who were crying when they were doing their stitches, because they were telling me, oh, my granny used to do this and I never paid attention to this, and I wish I had learnt it from her, that kind of thing. So these are all dying arts, and the whole idea was to bring that art out in the public awareness, so that people know how rich their cultural heritage is. That was the whole idea of doing this. And even during the course of this exhibition, we have some events series as well. So we have done some workshops of block printing, bead weaving. Bead weaving is a beautiful art from the Saurashtra region, where these women produce beautiful pieces with very tiny beads. And then on the 15th of August, we've got a whole textile day, where we're going to show charkha workshops and cotton weaving. And Tia, you are also kindly going to do a bit of drop spin workshop as well, talk about the textiles as well. And then on the 21st of August, we have a film screening day, where Rolf has connected with some filmmakers from Kutch, and we will be showing their wonderful 2 films, and there would be a question answer session as well. So the exhibition is still ongoing, but there are lots of other events happening also in the Wembley Library and the Wilston Library, 4th of August and 12th of August, for little children as well. So if anybody wants to engage in any of these events, please do so.
Thank you. That actually leads on to something I wanted to ask you all, because I know your background of exhibition curation is kind of rooted in music and sound and film, and I wondered how that influenced your curatorial side when researching and putting together the exhibition. How did that feed through?
I think the most important thing was for me to do an exhibition which is engaging, And I think visuals are, and also audio is something engaging, So we have a lot of films on the exhibition, and we have pictures. We have, instead of having a big text about somebody, we have just a big picture of the person, And I think we have a small text, and then we let the people talk in the exhibition, And I think this method was quite something special for this exhibition, And of course, we have some objects relating to the people, what they explain. And in addition, Lata just mentioned this. We have this little art exhibition. At the beginning, we called it crafts exhibition, but I think the women did so fantastic work. It's an art exhibition, you know, clearly. And then we put another screen there, and we showed some of the work, how it is done in Gujarat, how is the artwork done. Usually the lipid art is done in the construction of buildings like the bunga houses, and so you can see the film as well, how it's done. And we have my friend Arif Khatri. I worked with him a few years back, and he is a professional tie and dyer in Gujarat, in Kutch as well. And so I asked him to do a film about his workshop, you know. So he filmed it with his mobile phone, and I just edited together, you know. So I think that's interesting, you know. So bringing the crafts work, and also the craft in Kutch, you know. People don't know actually Kutch is very at the forefront in traditional arts, and it sells, you know. So this tie and dyer, he's selling his saris in Mumbai for good money, you know. So I think there was a renaissance of artwork, you know, through them, you know. So I think we want to show this together anyway, and this can be shown through audiovisual media quite well, I think, you know.
Yeah, amazing. Perhaps we could move on to questions from the audience. We have a couple through. I'll just put them on the screen now. This one comes in two parts. I will just read it out. So they say, in a context of prevalent Hindu nationalism in India and strong Islamophobia in the UK and globally, Gujaratis have been posited as the good immigrant. How do you think we can showcase pride in our culture and community and actually the hybrid nature of many Gujaratis, e.g. Ianas and Ismailis, without creating a divide and counter rhetoric? So yeah, if there's anybody who wants to.
Can I take a crack at it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a very, very beautiful question.
Definitely.
I think that I may give you my own example, that I was born in South Africa, a country that was riven by racism. I was only 2 years old when apartheid as a creed had started. And we were not allowed to have a toothache on the wrong day of the week because we couldn't find a dentist. But I feel very proud to say that in 1912, a young Hindu lawyer came to my granduncle and said, I've started a school. Can you send your child to my school? And my granduncle picked up my uncle's hand and said, he's too young. I want to teach him the principles of my religion. And Mahatma Gandhi, he was not Mahatma yet, took this little boy and asked the grandfather, what do you want to teach him? And when my granduncle told him, Gandhi said to my uncle, I will teach him this. Send him to my school. He will be under my care. And for the next year, Mahatma Gandhi was a teacher to this Muslim kid. And it was not the only Muslim kid that was there. There were other Muslim kids, there were Parsi kids, there were Christian children, there were Hindu children. So this was in 1912, over 100 years ago, when that whole notion of what we call pluralism today was already embedded in Africa through a Gujarati lawyer and a Jewish architect and children from all communities. Now, I think there we have a beautiful experience, an example of how that type of a principle can be lived in today's conflicted societies again, where we do not look at ourselves as Muslims or Hindus or Christians or Parsis or Jains, but look at the whole notion of how trade played an important role in our lives. How did we engage with the climate? We all had to deal with droughts. We had to deal with famines. How did we come to another part of the world and work with each other? How did Hindus and Muslims and different people help each other to set up businesses? You will find the stories right in the heart of South Africa today. You'll find it in Kenya. You'll find it in Nairobi. You'll find it in Kampala. You'll find it in Dar es Salaam. And I think that there is a beautiful story for us to bring forward and say, look, Gujarat did contribute this dimension to the understanding of what it meant to be human. And I think that can cut right across Islamophobias. It can cut right across, Hindu nationalism. I think we need to really capture the humanism that defined the people of that period of time who went through the Indian Ocean and created opportunities of trade, opportunities of coexistence. And I think there's a story for us to capture and to recreate in a very, very humanistic way. So that would be my sort of response from my own experience of a family that saw nothing wrong with a Hindu lawyer who teach a Muslim child values. And we are not the only family. You'll find a lot of people in South Africa who will give you similar stories of their children.
I think also these kind of projects are also vital for bringing people together and working on shared culture and shared heritage, shared ways of living, and actually having a space to actually come together and talk about different things, and actually, and also to find, or rather provide opportunities to express that collaboration as well. So I think actually these projects, they're not just about, having a nice exhibition or having a couple of nice events. They perform a much more important role than that. And I suppose when you're not really involved in it so much, I suppose that aspect gets lost. But actually these kind of projects, one of the reasons I wanted to really get involved with this and help it and support it is because they play a really vital role in this kind of collaboration, learning about each other, coming together and talking to people that you wouldn't necessarily meet otherwise. So actually there's so much more going on. So, just the same way Mohammed was talking about education, this is a whole other kind of education, but in a different kind of forum, and generating a whole range of conversations and it's multi-generational as well. It's not just school children, it's not just adults, it's a whole bunch of people talking. And even when they meet at workshops, it's the same kind of thing. You sit together and you learn something together and you chat and you think, actually, do you know what? Do you fancy a coffee another day? It's really important. And I think it's really easy just to forget how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of reminds me of something that Lata said earlier, Gujarati people are not monolithic, and yeah, absolutely.
And also, I think if I may say, I think we don't have good and bad immigrants. We have all immigrant communities in the UK have something to bring something. And I think that's very important. And then what Shushma said is our intention as curators of this exhibition. We want to bring the people together. We don't want to divide them even more. I think that's our context, therefore we do an exhibition, we don't have to repeat all the actual politics in any part of the world, I think we find a different level that people actually talk to each other. I don't think there's a solution without talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have another question here. Has your research explored Gujarati contributions during World War II?
Let that be our next project. I think that's a wonderful food for thought somebody has planted in my head. So, no, I'm afraid we haven't really had a chance to look into that, but it's an interesting question, and definitely we would like to look into that. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Great. And there is another question asking, why would you encourage all South Asians, not Gujaratis, to attend or check out the exhibition?
Our exhibition is open for everybody. It's not only just focused for the Gujarati community. It's kind of, we have had schools coming to see the exhibition. We have produced learning resources for schools, which are going out to more than 20 schools all over Brand. And, we have had so many different communities coming to see the exhibition. It's not just for the Gujaratis, it is for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I think that's all the questions from the audience. Maybe more will come in, but if there's anything else that anybody wanted to bring up, we have about 10 minutes left. We've got a new question here, actually. Do you think that the future generations, maybe, or maybe not, I have another question here. So why is it important to include dynamic educational and cultural activities for younger generations in a public exhibition about heritage?
Sheena?
Yeah, I'll just sort of tap into that. I think it's questions that we often find ourselves asking throughout work, education, schooling, friends, social. Like, how important is it to retain our culture? You know, if we completely integrate into a modern society, we will forget our language. We'll forget the food that we eat at home. We'll forget, you know, the storytelling, the cultural sort of, even the level of respect and how we speak to our elders. All of this is sort of integrated in our culture. And if we start sort of not engaging in those conversations with these kind of exhibitions, in these research projects, we're losing it. And that's our heritage, that our ancestors have sacrificed so much for us to be here. Those sacrifices could potentially go to vain. So I think this is the best time. I've said it throughout this, every time we're having conversations with my own friends and my own experiences, like, let's start asking our parents, you know, as we said, as it was mentioned earlier, for them, these opportunities weren't there, but they're here for us now. And it's the best time to be involved and start exploring ideas and doing various different things within local communities, as well as integrating and finding out about other cultural communities. And that together is a holistic form of educating ourselves of how we got here and how other migrant communities came and settled. So I think these are so much, as I've mentioned, these so much we can explore. And for me personally, it's so overwhelming. I get really overwhelmed by all of this richness that I just want to keep learning more and more, be it art, food, politics, culture. And so, yeah, I think it's a way of retaining and educating ourselves so we can pass on this information to the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wondered, Sheena, from your experience of working on the project, is there anything you're taking forward from it, or anything you're going to be working on from learning about?
Yeah, I think we've had these, it's such a rich body of work. So potentially there's so many avenues we could explore. Like, I'm particularly interested in the arts and crafts. Sort of, I learned about Lipan art myself, and I understood the technique and why they were done, what motifs meant, and certain aspects of the craft itself. So that was, for me, that was something I picked up, a skill I learned. You know, I would have loved to engage in other crafts, but I was really engaged with the Lipan. So for me, like, through this, I'd be really interested to explore an arts program, you know, where it's not just about creating these beautiful pieces and putting them in as showpieces. It's the stories behind it, you know, the indigenous communities, why were these sort of crafts done in their free time, what they meant, so that these potentially an idea for taking that forward, but just generally documenting the Indian diaspora journey and how storytelling. We've also had conversations about food. In lockdown, we've sort of we spent time at home with our parents, and we've learnt recipes. So potentially, and we discussed in had conversations about food. In lockdown, we've sort of we spent time at home with our parents, and we've learnt recipes. So potentially, and we discussed in conversations about food. In lockdown, we sort of we spent time at home with our parents. Sorry, I don't know what's happened.
Okay, I think it stopped.
So yeah, maybe an ebook or a recipe book of Gujarati recipes from our, you know, so various different. We've had ideas, so lots can be explored.
Yeah, just thinking about lockdown, actually, did that, just in terms of the curatorial side of it, did that allow you to develop more ideas or more workshops or more work? Just because I guess it was meant to come out last year, so how did that kind of feed into how the exhibition, the outcome of the exhibition?
I think obviously it impacted our audiences coming to the exhibition, because we have to have socially distanced audiences. But now we're depositing everything into our website. So there will be a permanent archive of all the work which we have done. And during the lockdown, I mean, I must say that the Brent Museum was very cooperative with us. You know, they helped us and they were very supportive. Even our funders were very supportive and they let us extend the project a little bit further. So I think everybody understood what the situation was, and people have just adjusted and done the job, you know.
Yeah.
But of course, it was very difficult to get this exhibition together in the COVID times. So we were lucky. The interviews were actually taken just before the COVID time started, just at the beginning, you know. So we managed to do the interviews, and we could do a lot of production work in this day. So we were quite busy in getting everything ready. So you have the exhibition as it would be in any other time, you know. And of course, as Lata said, we will have soon, everything will be online, so people can actually watch the films, they can watch the interviews, which they are about 1.5 hours long. So I think the material is there, so we have not done it for nobody. I think still, and today people coming, and please go to the Brent Museum in West London, and I think the exhibition is still open the whole month, nearly the whole month.
Yep. And so we have one final question here. Do you think with the future generations of people of Gujarati origin, England will be also seen as one of their homelands of Gujaratis, like what East Africa is for the Gujaratis born there?
I think for those of us who were born here, it is home, isn't it? I mean, I was born in Leicester. That's the only place I've ever really grown up. I mean, it is home. Whereas I know my dad always thought of himself as an East African, but for me, I'm British. This is all I know in terms of being raised, the culture I've grown up in.
This is definitely home. Like when I go to India, I'm asked where I'm from, so I'm not, I'm an NRI there. I'm labelled as an NRI, so this is home for me too. So yeah, like England for me is home.
It's interesting you say that. I remember the first time I went to Gujarat with my mum and dad and my brother. It was the biggest culture shock of my life, because I thought, this is some idiot teenager going off to India thinking, oh, going back to my roots, how extraordinary. And I was like, oh my God, this is a shock to the system. And it was, I don't know, I think I'd had some kind of stereotype in my head. But actually being there was a whole other thing, and it made me recognise just how British I suppose I was.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I think this is the beautiful part when we can hear people like Sheena and Shima and Sushma mentioning that this is home. It just shows how beautifully they are able to integrate the Gujarati culture with their host country, where you do not see a conflict between the two. So you feel enriched that you have a richer concentric circle of identities, and your identities are able to speak to each other without putting you into a difficult situation of conflict. And I think that's very beautiful. To me, that shows a truly pluralistic pathway where you could embrace all the things that make you, that are responsible for your makeup, and contribute towards good citizenry, to contribute to the betterment of the country where you live in.
I think also one doesn't cancel out the other.
Yeah. Our parents were East African in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. Well, our children will feel British or Canadian or Australian or American. It'll happen. And that will be the normal acculturation process that would be enriching rather than alienating. And I think this is where the education that Rolf and Lata will bring through their endeavors and through all the processes and programs we put forward, that this process of acculturation will be an ongoing one, very enriching.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're nearing the end of our session, but I thought before we wrap up, Lata, if you could just, in case anybody missed it, summarize the upcoming public program events that are taking part, if anyone was interested.
So we still have a couple of events happening on the 15th of August, which is India's Independence Day. we have chosen a wonderful program of textiles, looking at textiles, and we are going to have some charkha workshops. Charkha is the spinning wheel workshop. So we will have somebody who will demonstrate how to make khadi from yarns. And then we also have a weaving of the yarn material. And TI is also going to do a drop spin weaving workshops. It's a whole day's program from 11 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So if people haven't registered, do register. And then on the 21st of August, we have a film screening day where we have connected with two really interesting filmmakers from India who have produced some wonderful films on Kutch region. So there will be screening of two films, which will be followed by question answers. And after that, we are hoping to do something with the British Museum, fingers crossed, maybe next year. And it's all in Sushma's hands.
Pressure, no pressure.
No pressure.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to thank the audience for taking the time to listen tonight. And if you're able to, I really encourage you to visit the exhibition in person. It closes on the 22nd of August. But if not, the Gujarati Influences website is very extensive. They're in the process of uploading lots of images and information, which I'm sure will remain. And of course, lastly, I want to thank Lata, Rolf, Mohammed, Sheena and Sushma for taking the time to be with us for the last hour and sharing so much of your thoughts and insights. So thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.